There is a secret that the most powerful men on the planet guard with religious ferocity, a secret so counterintuitive that most people simply can't believe it when they hear it. This secret isn't written in any business book, isn't taught in elite universities, and it certainly won't be revealed by any social media. But Carl Jung, the bravest explorer of the depths of the human soul that the 20th century has known, dedicated 50 years of his life to unraveling this mystery. And what he discovered in the dark catacombs of the human unconscious can completely transform your relationship with money, power, and station. Jung wasn't just a psychoanalyst. He was a modern alchemist, a diver into the inner darkness who had the audacity to descend into the abysses that most prefer to ignore. There in those depths, where the light of ordinary consciousness rarely dares to penetrate, he found something that would make even the most convinced skeptics question everything they thought they knew. For decades, Jung observed his patients, from Swiss peasants to European millionaires, and noticed a disturbing pattern that repeated itself incessantly. The vast majority of human beings, Jung discovered, live imprisoned in a theater of illusions, an elaborate spectacle where each person wears a carefully crafted mask to please, impress, and gain the approval of others. He called these masks persona, a term that literally means the mask actor's ancient theater. Jung was deeply disturbed to observe how people sacrifice their most authentic essence, their most precious individuality, on the altar of collective approval. They worked jobs they hated to impress people they barely knew. They bought things they didn't need to gain the admiration of strangers. They posted their lives on social media not to express who they really were, but to construct an image of what they imagined others want to see. And the more visible these people became, the more attention they managed to attract, the more deeply imprisoned they became persona. The more distant they became themselves, the emptier they felt inside. But then Jung made an extraordinary observation that would change everything. He noticed that there was a small class of individuals, rare as diamonds in the sand, who operated in a completely different way. These people didn't seek the spotlight. They didn't beg for approval. They didn't prostitute their essence in exchange for likes, praise, or public recognition. They built monumental empires in absolute silence. They amassed obscene fortunes without anyone even knowing their name. They transformed entire industries while being invisible to the masses. And Jung realized something that would make all the difference. These people weren't hiding out of fear, cowardice, or insecurity. They were practicing a high and sophisticated form of psychic alchemy, an inner science that Jung would try to explain to the world through concepts like individuation, self, and totality of being. Jung discovered a paradox that seemed to defy all conventional logic. The more invisible you become to the outside world, the more powerful your presence becomes in the inner world. And it is precisely in this inner world, in this sanctum sanctorum of the individual psyche, that every true manifestation, every extraordinary creation, every impossible transformation is. Think about it for a moment. Where exactly is a revolutionary idea born? Where does a vision that will transform an industry germinate? Where is the unwavering determination necessary to build an empire forged? Not in social media comment, not in the likes of people you've never met, not in the external validation you receive from strangers on the internet. All these things are born in the profound silence of your own psyche and sacred space that Jung called the self, gravitational center of your totality, the most authentic core of your being. The invisible billionaires, those whose names you've probably never heard, but who control more wealth than entire countries, understood something fundamental that Jung spent his life trying to teach us. They understood that there is a great collective illusion operating in modern society. This illusion constantly whispers in our ears, be visible, be noticed, be recognized, because only through visibility will you have value, power, and Jung discovered that this is a devastating lie, a psychological trap that keeps most people trapped in a neurotic cycle of seeking external validation and never, ever truly satisfied. Why? Because the more you seek external validation, the more you feed the persona, and the more you distance yourself from the self, the more you live for the eyes of others, the less you live from your own inner center. The more visible you become, the more enslaved you become to opinions, expectations, and judgments of others. Jung intensely studied what he considered the central tragedy of modern human existence, the exile of the self. He observed with profound melancholy how billions of human beings spent their entire lives without ever truly knowing, without ever accessing the extraordinary power that resides in the depths of their own psyche. These people lived completely identified with their personas, with these superficial masks fabricated to collective. They didn't know who they really were. They didn't know their deepest desire. They didn't have access to their wildest creativity. They couldn't manifest their most extraordinary potential. Why? Because they were too busy playing a role for an audience that, in the end, didn't even truly care about them. And then Jung asked the question that would change everything. What would happen if you simply stopped? What would happen if you completely gave up this neurotic search for visibility, approval, and external validation? What would happen if you deliberately became invisible, not out of fear, but as a conscious act of inner revolution? Jung discovered that something extraordinary happens in that moment of radical choice. When you withdraw your psychic energy from the persona and direct it toward the self. When you stop living for the eyes of others and begin to live from your own inner center, you access levels of power, mental clarity, and capacity for manifestation that are simply not available to those who remain trapped in the theater of collective visibility. The true alchemists of wealth understood this millennia ago. They knew that invisibility is not weakness, it is concentrated power. It is not cowardice, it is superior strategy. It is not limitation, it is absolute freedom. When no one is watching, no one is judging, and no one is projecting their expectations and limitations onto you, something miraculous happens. You are finally free to become who you truly are. You can have ambitions as massive as your soul desires without fear of ridicule. You can attempt strategies as daring as your imagination allows without fear of criticism. You can fail, learn, recalibrate, and try again without the crushing weight of collective judgment on your shoulders. Jung realized that strategic invisibility creates something he considered absolutely essential for any true transformation: a protected psychic space. Imagine a womb where a new life is being gestated. The space needs to be protected, nurtured, kept safe from external interference during the delicate period of formation. Similarly, your visions, plans, your strategies for creating the impossible need a psychological womb where they can fully develop before being exposed to the outside world. Invisibility provides exactly that. A sacred container where the alchemy of manifestation can operate without interference, contamination, or sabotage from collective unconscious. But Jung went even deeper and discovered something that would make even the most skeptical tremble before the abyss of self-knowledge. He discovered that when you become too visible, when you constantly expose yourself to the gaze of the crowd, you are not simply dealing with the individual opinions of a people. You are connecting with something much older, much more powerful, and infinitely more. Jung was sitting in his office in Zurich when a woman entered his session, elegantly dressed, perfect smile, impeccable posture. She was the epitome of a successful woman in the eyes of society. Brilliant career, seemingly happy marriage, enviable social life. But when Jung asked her to simply sit in silence for a few minutes, without speaking, just observing herself, something extraordinary happened. After only 3 minutes of silence, she began to tremble. 5 minutes later, tears streamed down her perfectly made face. She couldn't even bear 10 minutes alone with herself. Jung realized at that moment something devastating. This woman had spent so many years building and maintaining her persona, her perfect social mask, that she had completely lost touch with who she really was beneath it. She had exiled herself from herself. This scene repeats itself every day in millions of lives around the world, although most people don't even realize it's happening. You wake up in the morning, and the first thing you do is check your phone. How many likes did your post from the night before get? How many comments? Who viewed your story? And immediately, even before brushing your teeth, even before having coffee, you're already living not from your inner center, but from the reaction of others. You go to work and spend the day not doing what your soul truly desires, but what will impress your boss, your colleagues, your parents. You come home and post a picture of dinner, not because that moment was genuinely special, but because you need to show 300 followers that your life is interesting. Jung called this the prostitution of the soul, and he didn't use that word lightly. Let me ask you a question that will sting. When was the last time you did something, anything, that absolutely no one but you would know about? When was the last time you created something, built something, experienced something without feeling the compulsive need to share, post, announce it? If you're having trouble answering this question, you're living completely through the persona. And Jung would say, you're dangerously close to losing your soul. Because here's the brutal truth he discovered. Every time you act not from your genuine self, but from your fabricated persona, you commit a small spiritual sin. You kill a little piece of your author. You betray who you really are in favor of who you think you should be. Jung observed that this betrayal has devastating consequences that most people don't even realize until it's too late. First, you lose access to your deepest creativity. Think about it. The most revolutionary ideas, the most transformative visions, the most powerful intuitions don't come from the superficial, conscious mind that's constantly worried about what others. They emerge from the depths of the unconscious, from that inner ocean that Jung spent his life exploring. But when you're completely identified with the persona, when every thought of yours is filtered through the question, what will others think of this? You completely sever your connection to those creative. You become a watered-down, domesticated, predictable version of who you could be. Secondly, you fragment your psychic energy in a way that Jung considered almost criminal. He extensively studied the concept of libido, not in the Freudian sexual sense, but as vital energy, creative force, manifesting power. Jung discovered that this energy is finite and directable. You only have a limited amount of it available each. And here's where most people make the fatal mistake. They waste this precious energy maintaining the persona, monitoring their image, managing impressions, responding to comments, checking notifications, worrying about what other people think. At the end of the day, there's no energy left to do the real work, to build something real, to manifest something extraordinary. The invisible billionaires understood this viscerally. They direct 100% of their psychic energy toward execution, construction, manifestation, while the masses waste that same energy on completely useless activities that only serve to feed the persona. But Jung discovered something even deeper and more disturbing. He realized that there is a devastating psychological price to pay for living through the persona, a price that accumulates silently over the years until it explodes in existential crises, inexplicable depressions, or that terrible feeling of emptiness so many outwardly successful people. Jung called this neurosis, saw neurosis not as mental illness in the traditional sense, but as the soul screaming, pleading, demanding that you stop betraying yourself and start living from your authentic center. How many people do you know who have everything that society says should make them happy, who still feel miserably empty inside? These people don't have a chemical problem in their brain. They have an existential problem in their soul. They have lived so long through the persona that they have completely lost touch with the self. Jung observed his wealthy patients and noticed a disturbing pattern. Those who sought constant visibility, those who needed to always be in the headlines, those who measured their worth by public recognition, these were often the most unhappy, the most anxious, the most dependent on external validation. They had built enormous fortunes but lost their souls in the process. On the other hand, Jung occasionally encountered rare individuals who had accumulated extraordinary wealth but remained completely unknown to the general public. These individuals had something different in their eyes, a depth, a presence, an inner solidity that others lacked. They didn't need external validation because they had found something infinitely more valuable: internal validation, a deep connection with the self, that sacred center of the totality of being. And then Jung asked a question that would completely change his understanding of the human psyche. Where exactly does this neurotic compulsion for visibility come from? Why are modern human beings so desperately addicted to attention, approval, recognition? Why would anyone prefer to live a visible lie rather than an invisible truth? The answer Jung found was both simple and terrifying. Because from childhood we have been programmed by what he called the collective unconscious, an invisible but incredibly powerful force that permeates all of human society. Imagine you are in a room full of mirrors. Each mirror reflects not your true image, but a distorted version of what others expect you to be. Your family expects you to be way. Your friends expect something else. Society has its expectations. Your culture has its standards. And you spend your whole life trying to adjust to all these conflicting expectations, trying to be the version of yourself that will please everyone. But one day you look inside and find nothing. You have become just a collection of reflections, a collage of others' expectations, a persona without substance. Jung saw this as the ultimate tragedy of modern existence. Billions of people living lives that are not truly their own, pursuing goals that are not genuinely theirs, maintaining images that do not reflect who they really are. The strategic invisibility practiced by true masters of manifestation isn't about hiding from the world. It's about protecting yourself from massive, overwhelming force that wants to transform you into another obedient follower, another domesticated and predictable human. It's about creating psychological space where you can finally ask the most important question of your existence. Who am I really when nobody's watching? What do I really want when I'm not trying to impress anyone? What is my true nature when I'm not wearing any mask? Jung discovered that these questions can only be answered in silence, in solitude, in consciously chosen invisibility. And when you begin to answer these questions honestly, when you begin to live from these answers courageously, something extraordinary begins. But to understand what this something is, you first need to understand the most controversial and most powerful discovery Jung ever made. A discovery about an invisible force that controls the lives of billions of people without them even knowing that this force exists. In 1913, Jung had a dream that terrified him. He dreamt he was descending through a series of subterranean chambers, each older and deeper than the last. In the first chamber were objects from the 19th century. In the second, medieval artifacts. In the third, Roman remains. And he continued descending through ever older layers of human history, until he reached a primordial chamber where he found primitive skulls and symbols that no known civilization had ever. Jung awoke trembling, covered in cold sweat, but at the same time electrified by a devastating revelation. There is something within the human psyche that is far older than any individual, something that carries the collective memory of the entire human species. All ancestral fears, all tribal limitations, all the thought patterns that kept our ancestors safe but small. He called this the collective unconscious, and this discovery would forever change our understanding of why so few people are able to truly manifest the extraordinary. Here's what you realize that will send chills down your spine when you become too visible. When you constantly expose yourself to the crowd, you're not just dealing with the conscious opinions of specific individuals. You're connecting directly to that primordial ocean of the collective unconscious, with millions of years of evolutionary programming that has a single objective: safe, predictable, part of the group. And here's the terrifying part. This collective unconscious doesn't want you to be extraordinary. It doesn't want you to stand out. It doesn't want you to create the impossible. Why? Because for 99% of human history, the individual who stood out too much, who was too different, who dared too much, was expelled from the tribe and died alone, devoured by predators. The collective unconscious carries this ancestral memory of terror. And it uses this terror to keep you in line, domesticated, controllable, average. Have you ever posted something on social media about a big goal you had, only to be bombarded with skeptical, sarcastic jokes, unsolicited advice about why it won't work? Have you ever shared a dream with someone close to you and seen that look? That look that says, be realistic, come back to reality, stop dreaming so big. Jung would say, you're not just dealing with that specific person's opinion. You're dealing with millions of years of programming from collective unconscious speaking through that person, trying to pull you back into the swamp of tribal mediocrity. And here's what most people don't understand. Every time you expose yourself to collective judgment, every time you seek approval from the masses, you are literally inviting that massive, overwhelming force into your psyche to plant seeds of doubt, fear, and limitation. But you might be thinking, is this just paranoia? Psychological exaggeration? Let me show you how this operates in practice in a way you won't be able to deny. Jung studied a phenomenon he called collective leveling. Imagine you are in a room with 100 people. 99 of these people, something is impossible. One person, you, believes it is possible. Now, if you remain invisible, working on your project inside, you keep your belief intact, execute without interfering. But what if you announce your project to those 99 people? What happens? The collective unconscious, operating through those 99 voices, begins to bombard you with skepticism, doubt, realism, until eventually, subtly, almost imperceptibly, your own belief begins to waver. Jung observed this process repeatedly, brilliant ideas dying not for lack of merit, but because they were prematurely exposed to collective skepticism. The invisible billionaires know something you urgently need to understand. The collective unconscious is like psychological gravity. It's constantly pulling everything and everyone toward the center, toward the average, toward the normal. The more visible you are, the stronger this gravity acts. Think of the billionaires everyone knows. Those who are constantly in the media. Observe them carefully. They are constantly having to manage their public image, respond to criticism, justify their decisions, defend their actions. They expend obscene amounts of psychic energy just maintaining their reputation, managing perceptions, controlling narratives. Now compare that to the billionaires nobody knows. Those who control even greater fortune but remain completely off the public radar. They don't spend a single second of energy on public opinion. They don't need to justify anything to anyone. They don't have to manage. All their psychic energy is available. One thing, ruthless execution. Jung made an observation that should be etched in fiery letters in the mind of anyone who truly wants to create something extraordinary. The masses always prefer comfortable mediocrity to uncomfortable greatness. Why? Because greatness is a mirror reflecting the smallness of the masses. And the masses hate being confronted with their own smallness. So what do the masses do? They try to destroy greatness, or at least reduce it to something more palatable, more normal, more average. And the most powerful weapon the masses have is collective judgment, public opinion, social pressure. But this weapon only works if you're visible. If you operate invisibly, this weapon cannot touch you. It's like being in an underground bunker while bombs explode on the surface. You are completely protected. Now let me reveal something Jung discovered, but that few truly understand in its depth. The collective unconscious doesn't operate solely through direct criticism. It also operates through something far more subtle and far more dangerous, something Jung called psychic contagion. Imagine you have a clear vision, a bold strategy, a plan you know deep down will work. But then you begin to expose yourself to share, to seek validation. And even if people don't criticize you directly, even if they smile and say encouraging words, there's an underlying energy, unspoken doubt, silent disbelief that begins to contaminate your own psyche. Jung observed that ideas and emotions spread unconsciously among human beings, like invisible viruses. When you expose yourself to the energetic field of the collective unconscious, you inevitably absorb its doubts, its fears, its limitations, even if no one directly verbalizes. Have you ever experienced that strange feeling where you were super confident about something, but after talking to certain people, even if the conversation was positive, you felt strangely drained and less confident? That's psychic contagion from the collective unconscious in action. You literally absorbed the collective doubt of those people, even if they didn't verbally express doubt. Jung discovered that this happens because there is communication happening below the verbal level, an unconscious communication from psyche to psyche, and this communication is much more powerful than words. The masters of invisible manifestation know this viscerally, and that's why they protect their visions, like a medieval alchemist protected their secret formulas. Here's where it gets even more interesting and disturbing. Jung discovered that the collective unconscious has what he called archetypes, universal patterns of behavior and thought that exist in all human culture. One of the most powerful archetypes, that of the hero who is punished for his greatness. Think of all the mythical stories we know. Icarus flies too high and falls. Prometheus steals fire from the gods and is eternally tortured. The hero who dares too much is always punished. This archetypal pattern is ingrained in the collective unconscious of human. And when you become too visible, when you dare too much publicly, you activate this archetype. Millions of people simultaneously. Subconsciously, collectively, these people begin to expect, even desire, downfall. Not because they are bad people individually, but because the archetype of the punished hero is operating through them at the level of the collective unconscious. The invisible billionaires understood something profound. You can have all the greatness you desire. You can fly as high as your soul demands. You can steal fire from the gods, transform reality. But only if you do it invisibly to the eyes of the mass. Only if you protect your heroic journey from the envious gaze of collective unconscious. Only if you build your empire in the shadows until so solid, so real, so indestructible, that when it finally becomes visible, it will be too late for the collective unconscious to destroy it. Jung studied this pattern repeatedly. The great transformers of history always went through long periods of invisibility, solitary work in the shadows, before emerging with enough power to withstand collective skepticism. But Jung didn't stop at analyzing the problem. He went further and discovered something that completely changes the game, something that transforms the invisibility of a defensive strategy into an offensive weapon of manifesting power. He discovered that when you operate invisibly, when you deliberately withdraw from the gravitational field of the collective unconscious, three extraordinary things begin to happen. Three alchemical principles that the true masters of creation use to literally bend reality to their will. Jung kept in his private office a 15th century alchemical manuscript that had cost a fortune. His fellow psychoanalysts mocked him for wasting money on medieval superstitions. But Jung knew something they didn't. Those alchemists weren't literally trying to turn lead into gold. They were describing in symbolic language the most powerful psychological transformation process that exists. And at the heart of that process was a principle the alchemists called the work in secret, the work done away from profane eyes, protected in a sealed vessel they called a vase hermeticum. Jung realized that this sealed vessel was a perfect metaphor for strategic invisibility. And when you understand the three alchemical principles that operate within that sealed vessel, you understand why invisible billionaires are able to manifest what seems impossible to everyone else. The first principle Jung identified he called the restraint of libido. But let me translate that into language that will turn your world upside down. Imagine you have a massive goal, a vision that will completely transform your life. Now, the moment you conceive that vision, it exists as pure potential energy in your psyche, like superheated steam in a pressure cooker. This energy is your creative libido, your raw manifesting power. Now, what happens when you share this vision prematurely? When you post it on social media, when you tell 10 friends, when you announce it publicly? Jung discovered something devastating. You literally leak this potential energy. It's like opening the pressure cooker valve before the food is cooked. All that powerful steam escapes uselessly into the atmosphere and doesn't work. Every time you share an idea, portion of the psychic energy associated with that idea, at least in the act of sharing. You feel a momentary satisfaction, a small dopamine rush validation, but the price is devastating. You've lost a precious portion of the fuel you would need to actually execute that vision. Jung observed this pattern repeatedly in his patients. Those who talked incessantly about their grand plans rarely executed. On the other hand, those who worked in almost obsessive silence frequently manifested results that seemed miraculous. It was no coincidence. It was psychological alchemy in action. When you keep your vision secret, when you operate invisibly, all that energy remains contained, pressurized, concentrated, available for execution. Medieval alchemists said that the hermetically sealed vessel was essential because without it the precious vapors would escape, great work would fail. Jung realized they were absolutely right, only they weren't talking about physical chemistry, talking about psychic dynamics. And here's what will shock you. Calculated, based on his clinical observations, that a person who prematurely shares their visions loses on average 60 to 70% of the psychic energy needed to manage them. This means you're starting any project with only 30% of the necessary fuel, and then you wonder why you can't finish anything. The second alchemical principle that Jung identified is even more surprising. He realized that the human unconscious operates radically differently when protected from external interference. Jung called this the activation of the autosymbolic function, but I'll explain it in practical terms that will blow your mind. When you work on something in complete silence, without sharing, without seeking validation, without exposing your process, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your unconscious begins to work on the problem anonymously, independently, creatively. You sleep and wake up with insights. You're taking a shower and solutions appear out of nowhere. You're driving and entire strategies spontaneously reveal themselves. Jung studied this phenomenon intensely and discovered that the unconscious is a creative genius, but only when it has protected psychological space to operate. When you are constantly exposed to external judgment, and you are always checking what others think. Your unconscious cannot do this deep creative work because it is too busy managing social anxiety. Jung had a patient, businessman who was trying to develop a revolutionary product. For the first 6 months, the businessman constantly talked about his project with anyone who would listen. Progress, 0. Jung then gave him a radical instruction. Work on your project every day for 3 months, but don't tell absolutely anyone. The businessman found the instruction bizarre, but agreed. What happened in the following 3 months surprised even Jung. The man made such dramatic progress that the product went from a vague concept to a functional prototype. When Jung asked what had changed, the businessman said something revealing. For the first time, I stopped thinking about what others would think, started listening to what my own mind was telling me, and my mind had answers I never knew existed. This is the second alchemical principle in action. Invisibility activates unconscious creativity, but it is the third principle that Jung considered the most powerful and most dangerous of all. He discovered that when you operate invisibly for long enough, when you truly commit to the sacred silence of solitary work, you begin to develop what he called the transcendent function. This is a concept that most people don't understand. So pay attention, because what I'm about to explain is worth more than any MBA from an elite university. The transcendent function is the psyche's ability to unite opposites, to synthesize contradictions, to create something completely new from the tension between seemingly incompatible forces. This is how every revolutionary breakthrough in history has happened. Someone managed to hold two contradictory ideas in their mind simultaneously and synthesize a third idea that transcends both. But here's the secret Jung discovered. The transcendent function only operates under specific conditions. It needs solitude, it needs silence, it needs invisibility. Why? Because maintaining two opposing forces in productive tension in your mind is psychologically uncomfortable, almost painful. Most people can't tolerate this discomfort for more than a few minutes before seeking relief talking to someone. Posting something, seeking external validation that will prematurely resolve the tension. But when you are forced by invisibility to remain with this tension, when there is no easy escape through social validation, something miraculous happens. Transcendent function eventually produces synthesis, a solution, a vision that literally could not exist without that prolonged tension. The invisible billionaires are masters of the process. They can tolerate years, sometimes decades, of solitary work and creative tension, and then emerge with innovations that seem like magic to out. Jung studied the biographies of history's great inventors, artists, and entrepreneurs, and found a consistent pattern. They all went through long periods of creative invisibility before their major breakthroughs. Thomas Edison worked in near total secrecy before unveiling the light. The Wright brothers built the first airplane in complete secrecy. Steve Jobs disappeared from public life for years before returning with the iPhone. This is no accident or coincidence. It is the conscious or unconscious application of the three alchemical principles Jung identified: containment of psychic energy, activation of unconscious creativity, and development of the transcendent function. Now let me tell you something Jung discovered, but that is rarely discussed because it is too disturbing. These three principles do not operate in isolation. They amplify each other in a positive feedback. The more you contain your psychic energy through invisibility, the more powerful your unconscious creativity becomes. The more powerful your unconscious creativity, the more capable you become of tolerating the tension necessary to activate the transcendent function. And the more you develop the transcendent function, the more capable you become of manifesting visions that seem impossible to others. It is a virtuous circle of increasing manifesting power, but only if you keep the vessel sealed, only if you remain invisible while the alchemy takes. Jung realized that most people never experience even 1% of this power because they open the vessel prematurely. They leak energy. They block the creative unconscious. They escape the transcendent tension. And then they wonder why their lives are so mediocre, why their results are so ordinary, why they never manage to create anything truly extraordinary. The answer is simple but brutal. They're operating too visibly, too exposed, too vulnerable to the collective unconscious that wants to keep them small. But Jung went even deeper and made a discovery that few dare to accept. A discovery about a dark part of the psyche that contains not only our deepest fear, but also our fiercest power. A force so intense that most people spend their entire lives trying to repress it. Jung was alone in his stone tower in Billionaire, a refuge he had built with his own hands far from any civilization, when he had a vision that made him question everything he thought he knew about human nature. He saw emerging from the depths of his own psyche, dark, menacing, almost monstrous figure, carrying within it all the anger, unbridled ambition, lust for power, and wild impulses that Jung had spent years trying to repress in order to be accepted as a respectable psychoanalyst. Conservative Swiss. His first reaction was one of absolute horror. But then, in a moment of courage that would change his entire work, Jung did something radical. Instead of fleeing or repressing that dark figure, he confronted it directly and asked, "Who are you?" The answer he received from the depths of his unconscious shocked him. "I am you. The part of you that you fear too much to acknowledge, but also the part that contains all the power you need to accomplish your true mission in this world." This was Jung's most dangerous and transformative discovery. Within each human being exists a region of the psyche that he named the shadow, an unmapped territory where all aspects of our personality reside that we learned since childhood to deny, repress, hide. Society, with all its rules and expectations, teaches us that certain emotions are unacceptable, certain desires are shameful, certain ambitions are immoral. And so we spend our entire existence pushing these aspects into the shadows of our unconscious, believing that by doing so, we become better people, more accepted, more civilized. But Jung made a discovery that turned everything upside down. By repressing the shadow, you are not becoming better, you are becoming weaker, more fragmented, more powerless. Why? Because your shadow contains not only your negative aspects, it also contains most of your raw power, wildest creativity, your fiercest ambition, your capacity to do what is necessary to manifest the. Now pay attention. What I'm about to reveal explains why so many good, well-intentioned, and hardworking people remain wrapped in mediocrity entire lives. When you constantly live in the public eye, when you're always worried about what others will think, you're forced to keep your shadow completely repressed. You can't express unbridled ambition because that would seem greedy. You can't show relentless determination because that would seem cruel. You can't reveal your desire to dominate your field because that would seem arrogant. So you smile, you're polite, you remain humble, and your shadow remains locked in the basement of your unconscious, screaming, banging on the walls, desperately trying to be recognized. And all that energy, all that power, all that wild force remained trapped down there, inaccessible for you to use in goals. Jung observed something extraordinary happen when a person finally had the courage to become invisible to collective judgment. For the first time in their life, this person gained the psychological space to confront their own shadow without fear of being judged by others. And when you confront your shadow instead of repressing it, when you truly look at those aspects of yourself that you've spent years denying, something miraculous happens. You discover that what you considered monstrous is actually magnificent. Your boundless ambition is not a character flaw. It's fuel for extraordinary achievements. Your will to power is not unhealthy selfishness, necessary force to transform reality. Your relentless determination is not cruelty. its unwavering commitment to vision. Jung called this process shadow integration, and he considered it the most important and most difficult work a human being can. Let me tell you about one of Jung's most fascinating patients, a man we'll call Heinrich. Heinrich came to Jung because, despite having all the necessary qualifications, he never advanced beyond mid-level positions in the companies where he worked. He was brilliant, educated, respected by everyone. Something held him back. During months of analysis, Jung discovered that Heinrich had completely repressed his shadow. He was afraid of his own ambition, afraid of his desire for domination, afraid of his will to be the best. These desires seemed bad to him, so he pushed them into these. Jung gave Heinrich a radical task. For 6 months, work on a personal project in complete secrecy. During this project, allow yourself to be as ambitious, as ruthless, as domineering as you truly are, without worrying about what anyone would think. Heinrich was terrified by the idea. He agreed. What happened in the following 6 months was extraordinary. Working in complete invisibility, Heinrich integrated aspects of his shadow that he had repressed for 30 years, allowed himself to be aggressively ambitious and the project he created during that period eventually became a company that made a millionaire. But more important than the money, Jung observed that Heinrich had become complete, integrated, truly powerful for the first time in his existence. Here's what the invisible billionaires know you urgently need to understand. Shadow integration is only possible in invisibility. Why? Because confronting your shadow necessarily means allowing aspects of yourself that society judges as negative to surface. If you are constantly visible, constantly being judged, you will never have the courage to do this crucial work. You will continue to repress your shadow to maintain your acceptable social image. In doing so, you will remain stuck with only a fraction of your power available. Masters of manifestation have understood that they need the totality of their being, including and especially shadow aspect, to create the impossible. They need their boundless ambition, their will to power, their ability to be ruthless when necessary. And they can only access these aspects by operating invisibly to the eyes that would judge these qualities as flaws. Jung made an observation that would be engraved in gold. The difference between a mediocre person and an extraordinary person, not talent, intelligence, or opportunity. The difference is that the extraordinary person integrated their shadow and has access to 100% of their psychic power, while the mediocre person has repressed their shadow, operates with only 20 or 30% of their total capacity. Think about it. Trying to build an empire, create something revolutionary, manifest the impossible, but you are doing it with only 1/3 of your available power. And then you are surprised when you cannot compete with those rare individuals who have access to their full power. It's not fair competition. They are operating with a 12-cylinder engine, while you are trying to do the same thing with 4 cylinders, because the other 8 are locked in your repressed shadow. But Jung went even deeper and discovered something that will make you question everything. He realized that the shadow doesn't just contain repressed individual power. It also contains aspects of what he called the collective shadow ancestral patterns of strength, ferocity, and survival capacity that modern civilization has tried to domesticate and eliminate. When you integrate your personal shadow, you also begin to act this collective, this ancestral reservoir of primal power that allowed your ancestors to thrive in hostile environment, dominate terror-filled civilization. This force exists within you now, moment. But it is completely inaccessible while you remain trapped in the neurotic need to be accepted, approved, and seen as a good person by the collective. The invisible billionaires don't have this problem. No one is watching their private meetings where they make ruthless decisions. No one is judging their aggressive expansion strategy. No one is criticizing their boundless ambition to dominate entire markets. They can be as big, as fierce, as transcendent as their integrated shadow allows. And here's the truth that few dare to accept. You also have this capacity within you right now. The only difference is that you haven't yet created the necessary conditions to access it. You're still operating too visibly, too concerned with the opinions of others, too trapped in the need for collective approval. Jung wrote something in his private diaries that should change your life today. The encounter with the shadow is the beginning of individuation, but only if you have the courage to integrate what you find instead of fleeing back to the mediocre safety of the collective persona. The strategic invisibility that masters of manifestation practice is not a superficial business tactic. It is an essential condition for the most important psychological work of your existence. Integration of the shadow, access to full power, manifestation of the totality of self. Without it, you remain fragmented, weak, dependent on external validation, unable to create the extraordinary that your soul knows is possible. And now you are faced with the most important choice you will ever make in your life. A choice that will determine whether you spend the rest of your existence as just another one among billions, or whether you finally have the courage to do what Jung considered the supreme work of the human soul. Jung spent the last years of his life in his stone tower in Billionaire, far from universities, far from the media, far from the academic spotlight that so pursued him in his youth. He had deliberately chosen invisibility, not because he world, but because he had discovered something more valuable than any public recognition could offer: the absolute freedom to become completely who he was. It was there, in that sacred silence, that Jung completed his most profound work, not in published books, but within himself. He achieved what he considered the supreme goal of human existence, what he called individuation, the process of becoming whole, integrated, complete. And before leaving this world, Jung left us a map, a series of precise instructions on how anyone can tread this same path of radical. Jung's first instruction is both simple and terrifying. You need to make a conscious and deliberate choice to become invisible. This doesn't mean abandoning your life, deleting your social media, or completely isolating yourself from the world. It means fundamentally shifting the gravitational center of your from the outside in, from the ego to the self, from the persona to the totality. It means deciding that, from this moment on, you will no longer live for the eyes of others. You will live from your own inner center. This decision needs to be radical, absolute, non-negotiable. Because the moment you make this choice, the collective unconscious will immediately begin. Friends will question why you're less active on social media. Family members will ask why you no longer share your plans. Society will whisper in your ears that invisibility is failure, that if you are not being seen, you are not succeeding. You need to have the courage to ignore all these voices and remain true to your decision. Jung's second instruction is practical and specific. Choose a goal that seems impossible to you right now. Something so big that you would be ashamed to admit to other people that you are trying to achieve it. This goal needs to come not from your persona, not from what you think you should want, from your deepest self, from that place within you that knows your true mission in this world. And then, for at least the next 30 days, work on this goal every day in complete silence. Don't tell anyone, don't post on social, don't seek validation or approval, just execute, just build, manifest. During these 30 days, you will experience something extraordinary. The containment of your psychic energy will create increasing internal pressure, an intensity you have probably never felt before. This pressure is good. This pressure is the fuel for manifestation. Don't relieve this pressure by sharing prematurely. Keep the vessel sealed. Let the alchemy happen. Jung's third instruction is the most challenging, but also the most transformative. During this period of invisibility, you need to confront your shadow. This means allowing aspects of yourself that you have always repressed to surface. Boundless ambition, your will to power, your capacity to be ruthless when don't judge these aspects as good or bad. Simply acknowledge them, accept them, integrate them. Jung said that you cannot become whole by eliminating parts of yourself. You can only become whole by integrating all parts, including and especially those you fear. Keep a journal during this process. Write every day about what you are discovering about yourself, about the shadow aspects that are emerging, about how you are feeling while working in it. This journal will become a sacred record of your individuation. Jung warned us that this process is not easy. There will be times when you feel an almost unbearable urge to share, to seek validation, to check if you're on the right track. These moments are tests. They are opportunities to strengthen your psychological independence or to fall back into neurotic dependence on external approval. Every time you resist the temptation to share, every time you choose to remain invisible despite the discomfort, you are strengthening yourself and weakening the control that the collective unconscious has over you. You are literally reprogramming your psyche to operate from inner power instead of external validation. And here's what Jung promised. If you truly commit to this process, if you truly operate invisibly long enough, something extraordinary will happen. You will begin to manifest results that will surprise you. Solutions will appear out of nowhere. Opportunities will arise synchronistically. Your creativity will explode. Your mental clarity will become crystal clear. Your ability to execute will multiply. And most importantly, you will experience for the first time in your life what it is to live from your own center, free from the expectations, judgments, and limitations of the collective. You will feel an inner power you never knew existed. Power will not depend on likes, comments, or anyone's approval. It will come from within, from the integrated self, from the totality of being. So now I make the same call to you that Jung made to bravest patience. Do you have the courage to disappear in order to finally find yourself? Do you have the courage to become invisible to access your deep? Do you have the courage to betray the expectations of the collective to honor the truth of yourself? If your answer is yes, then begin today, now, at this moment. Choose your impossible goal and commit to 30 days of sacred invisibility. And when you experience the transformation that this process brings, come back here and leave just 3 words, even anonymously. If I became invisible, these 3 words will serve as a beacon for others who are seeking the same path of individuation that you have chosen to tread. If this video touched something deep within you, if you recognized the call of your own soul to finally become who you truly are, leave a like now. This like isn't for me. It's so that this message reaches other seekers who need. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications because this journey is just beginning. The next videos will take you even deeper into the mysteries of the psyche into the secrets that the masters of manifestation use, into the truths that can completely transform your reality. And comment below which part of this message resonated most with you. Your comment could be the spark that ignites someone else's transformation. The question that keeps echoing in the depths of your soul is the same one Jung asked himself in that stone tower. Will you have the courage to become invisible to finally discover who you truly are? To access the power that has always existed within you? To create the impossible that your soul knows is possible? The choice, as always, is yours.